There are essentially three different workflows you can choose from when doing modern web design in a page builder. The first is styling everything at the ID level, and you'll see a lot of beginners do this. The second is what is called a utility first approach, which uses utility classes for almost everything. And then there is the third approach, which is based on adding a custom class to all of your elements, styling that custom class. There is only one official proposed workflow for automatic CSS, and that is the third method. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you a comparison between the three methods, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons so that you understand why the third method is the way that it is. And then I'm also going to show you a feature called AUTOBEM in automatic CSS that actually makes the third method just as fast as the first two methods with none of the downsides. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to build essentially a feature section. It's going to have an introduction and it's going to have a grid of icon cards. I am going to build this 3 different times. The first, styling everything at the ID level. The second, using a utility first approach. And the third, using the official proposed workflow in automatic CSS. Okay, so let's start with styling at the ID level. I'm going to add a section. This container that comes up is going to be the container for my introduction. I'm going to add 2 blocks to that. In the left side block, I am going to add a heading and I'm going to add text for a paragraph. Actually, it's not going to be a paragraph. That's going to be an accent heading. So we'll say accent heading just like this. And then in this block over here, I'm going to add text that is going to be for my paragraph. Now, just to show you another little sub feature in automatic CSS, if you ever need lorem ipsum text, you can say ipsum and then dash short and then put a semicolon and that will just give you lorem ipsum text. That is another little hidden feature of automatic CSS. We're not going to cover that with a specific video, but it's there if you need it. Okay, so what I want is I want this paragraph right here. Let's actually make them paragraphs. Both of these can be paragraphs. This one can be over to the right, and then this group of content is going to stay over to the left. So I'm going to grab the entire container here, and I'm going to say display grid, and then for grid template columns, even though I'm styling at the ID level, I am using automatic CSS. So I still want to use tokens. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say, let's make this a grid 2. Now I want to align this to the center. So I'm going to hit align to the center. And then I want this to be before the heading. So I'm going to say layout. I'm going to come down to order and I'm going to say -1. I have now created my introduction. So section introduction. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a container below that, and this is going to be for my grid. Okay, so I am going to add a card. Let's add a block in here. Now you can't see the block because we don't have a grid yet. So let's make our grid. We're going to say display grid on that container. Again, right click. I want 4 columns, so I'm going to choose 4, and I want my grid gap. So I'm going to right click the input for gap, and I'm going to choose grid gap. And now you can see that I have a card. Okay, fantastic. So what I want in here is I want a heading, I want text, and I want an icon. Now I'm going to choose the paragraph, and the reason I'm putting the icon last, same reason I put the accent heading last, is I want those to come after the heading and the DOM. I want the heading to be the first thing in the DOM, which is essentially the code for the website, right? I'm going to make this explicitly in H3. This is a paragraph. Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to make these very, very simple cards, right? So we are going to style layout. I'm using automatic, even though I'm styling at the ID level, I still want to use tokens, right? So I'm going to right click the padding. I'm going to choose medium and I'm going to expand that to all sides. So automatic CSS is still helping me here, even though this isn't the proposed workflow. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to choose BG Ultra Light. I'm going to go to border. I want to show you another feature of automatic CSS, which is automatic variable expansion. Normally you would have to write var and double dash radius, okay? But in automatic CSS, just type double dash radius and hit enter and it will wrap it in the var for you. And then I'm gonna apply that to all sides. So now I have my rounded corners. I wanna take this icon and I wanna order -1 on that. And so now I have my icon card. I'm pretty much done with that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate. Actually, before I duplicate, all three approaches, you should be organizing your structure panel as you go, right? So we're going to call this features, right? Features, just like this. And then this would be the intro. This would be like, we can call it the left block. We can call this the right. That's a heading. This is our accent heading. This is our lead paragraph, okay, lead. And then this is gonna be our feature grid. And then we're gonna say, this is a feature card, and we have a heading, we have text, and we have an icon. So regardless of the workflow that you're using, it is best practice to structure or to organize your structure panel consistently. And this actually, when we get to the third step, the third workflow, this is actually going to come in extra handy for you, right? But you should be doing it with any workflow. An organized structure panel is very, very important for an organized project. Okay, so I have done what I need to do. I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate these cards. So this section is done now. Aside from putting actual content in, which we're not going to worry about, but the structure, the design, whatever, it's effectively done. And if you notice, I styled everything at the ID level. If you don't know what that means, I didn't add any classes to anything. I just, bricks, when you just add things and you start styling them, it applies those styles to the ID of the element. This is unique styling on every single ID. And you're going to see where this comes into play at the end in terms of pros and cons. Actually, you know what? To make this super easy, let's just do the pros and cons as we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section, right? And we're going to pretend, I'm going to duplicate it two more times. So we just have 3 instances of it. We are going to pretend that these other instances actually exist on other pages. They're not even on this page. They're on other pages of the website because most modern websites are more than one page. And you reuse things like icon cards and intros over and over and over and over and over again to speed up the development process, right? And to keep the design very consistent. This is common, okay? Nothing uncommon about this. So, question is, when things need to change, what does the workflow look like? For example, let's say we need to remove the background color of this card and replace it with a border. And let's say that we want to move the icon actually to the bottom, or we want to change the color of this text right here. We don't want it to be the default text dark. We want it to be text dark muted. Okay, so let's make a couple of these changes. I'm going to take the background color off, and I am going to add a border. So we're going to say border, we're going to say 1 on all sides, we're going to say solid, and we will choose like neutral light or something like that for the border. So now I have my border, and I'm going to move the icon. They want that back at the bottom. So I'm going to take off the order -1 that I had on there. And then with the typography, they said that we want text dark, but we want the muted version of text dark so that there's a little bit of contrast between our heading and our text. Great, not difficult to make those changes. The problem is it only made it to this one card. And that's because ID styling only affects a single element at a time, right? Every one of these stylings is unique, which, by the way, if we think in terms of efficiency and performance of our style sheet, what we've done by duplicating this card is we've actually taken the block of CSS that is designed for styling a card, and we've duplicated it for every instance of the card. So if there are 100 cards, it's going to write that CSS over and over and over again 100 times. This is not very efficient. It is not very performant from a code base standpoint. From a CSS style sheet standpoint, you are writing those same instructions over and over and over and over again, which is why when I change one, none of the others change, right? And so what I end up having to do is in a page builder, for example, you copy styles and then you come over and you paste styles. But as you see, that doesn't tend to do the trick. It copied the border. I don't even know what else it did. It definitely didn't copy this text. It didn't copy the styling that was on this icon card. And this happens constantly in page builders. The copy styles, paste styles thing, especially when you've created custom layouts and custom elements, is not predictable, is not consistent. And so what do I do now? I can't delete these cards and duplicate this again because then I lose the content that is inside of them. Remember, this just pretend that all of the content is unique. You're not duplicating the content over and over and over again. You're only duplicating the design over and over and over again. So I'm actually stuck. I'm actually stuck here. I have to go card by card by card by card, whether there's 4 of them or 40 of them. I have to go one by one to change the styling on every single instance because they're all uniquely styled. That's what styling at the ID level is doing. And remember that these other ones we said these were on different pages, which now I have to leave this page and I got to go to other pages. But this also assumes that I can even remember where all the cards were used, right? We could come back to a project 6 months later, a year later to make changes like this. We're not going to remember where these cards were used on the website. So we're in a really, really bad situation. We're inefficient and non-performant from a style sheet standpoint. We're not maintainable and we're not scalable. In fact, the bigger this website gets, the bigger the problem gets. So you would never want to do this workflow. This is actually the most popular workflow when using page builders, which is why I rail against it. It is a absolutely terrible, atrocious workflow that you should never, ever, ever use. So let's get rid of it and let's do all of this again. So I'm going to delete all of this. We're starting fresh. Now we're going to look at workflow number 2. This is called a utility first workflow. We want to try to use what are called utility classes for almost everything that we do, as much as possible, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my section. I'm going to add my 2 blocks again, block. In this one, I'm going to add my heading. I'm going to add text for my accent heading. And over here, I'm going to add text for my lead paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to change both of these to paragraph. This is going to be my introduction heading, right? Okay, now I want this to be a grid 2 again. The difference is instead of going display, grid, and styling at the ID level like I did before, I'm going to come up to the classes input. I'm still going to right click. Automatic CSS is still going to help me with this. And I'm going to type in grid and I'm going to choose 2. And by choosing 2, it puts a class on that container that turns it into a 2-column grid. It does this for me, right? That's what a utility class does. It's adding the styling for me. Now what I'm going to do is right click and I'm going to say align and I'm going to come down to align items and I'm going to find the center. And that is going to give us align item center on our container right here, which is going to center this text, which when this is actually ipsum, will look the way that it's supposed to look. And when this is actually an accent heading, it'll look the way it's supposed to look. By the way, I want this to go to the top again. We need to order -1, right? So I'm going to right click again, type in order, and I'm going to say first. Okay, so order first will bring it to the top. It'll now be in the first position. So my intro, guys, is done. Very fast, very efficient, right? Okay, nothing crazy. This still is not the proposed workflow, but we're going to keep going. So let's do my container. Even though automatic CSS facilitates this kind of workflow, it is not the proposed official workflow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to go in and make this a 4-column grid. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to do grid. Remember, I'm right clicking on the class input, not on the style inputs down below. Okay, so I'm going to choose 4 for my 4-column grid. It's going to put a grid 4 on there. I'm going to go ahead and add my block in here. And I can just start adding things to the block. Let's do the heading. Let's do the text. Let's do the icon. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to take this icon, and we've already seen how to do this. We can order this first, right? I'm going to go ahead and grab the entire card. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to say pad, which is going to allow me to choose padding. It's going to put a padding M class on there. And that looks pretty good. Let's just go BG, and let's choose contextual background color. BG Ultralight, and it's going to put that on there as well. And so I'm just stacking classes on to get to the desired result. I even have a class called border, which will apply the radius and the border style all at once. And you're probably asking yourself, Kevin, how did it know what kind of border you want? Well, we have a global border style for the website that we can set. So if I come over to borders and dividers and borders, I can choose what is my radius, what is the width of a default border, what style is the default border, what color is the default border. You actually get a light and a dark variant, okay? That's going to be saved for a different video, but this is in effect what you get with that utility class. And so now I have done this, but oh God, I haven't organized my structure panel yet. So let's go up here and say features, right? This is going to be the intro. This is going to be the left. This is going to be the right. We want to keep this nice and organized. This is our accent heading. So we know when we come back to this project what everything is when we're looking at the structure panel. And as pages get more complex, it's very easy to get lost in the structure panel. If you have an organized structure panel, you know where everything's at. You don't get lost, right? So this is going to be our lead paragraph. This is going to be our feature grid. This is going to be our feature card heading. This is going to be our text, and we have an icon. Great, now I am able to duplicate this out. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and duplicate again, right? Pretend those duplicates are now on a different page. Okay, so first, right off the bat, there is one big difference in our style sheet now. Because we're using utility classes and the way that classes work, the styling and the code for the styling is assigned to the classes. You can use the class once, and it's going to load that code. You can use the code 5,000 times. It's going to load one instance of the code. So the instruction to make this card have the BG Ultralight background and the padding M and the border, that styling is written once. And it doesn't matter that there are 1,000 iterations of the card. It's not going to write that code over and over and over and over again. It's going to reference the initial instruction over and over and over and over again. So from a performance standpoint, this is far more performant than the ID approach. Because remember, the ID approach took that block of styling and duplicated the styling instructions for as many instances as there were on the page. But this only writes the CSS once, and then every other instance of the element simply references and re-references that initial instruction. Far more performant. Now, the downside of this approach is that we still have a scalability and maintainability problem. So what we're going to do is we are going to, and I added the border early. That was actually supposed to be done in the rework, okay? But it's okay. Remember, we have to get rid of this, and we have to put the text muted class on this text right here. So what I'm going to do is get rid of the background color. I'm going to grab the text. We're going to go ahead and do text, and we're going to say text dark muted. It's going to put that class on the text now. And then we want to bring the icon back to the bottom, right? So those were the proposed changes that we needed to make. And once again, you see I'm in a very, very similar situation, okay, as I was with the ID styling. I have changed one card, but none of the other cards have updated. And this is yet another scenario where I can't copy and paste styles. I have to go one by one to remove utility classes and then add utility classes. And I have to remember where all instances of these things are on every single page, right? Okay. So this is not great. Same thing, by the way, with the intros. Like if I was wrong on grid 2, and this actually needs to be a grid 2.3 or a grid 3.2 or something like that, I would take this off and I would come down here and say, let's do grid 3.2, which is a little bit different structure. And you see that now this intro and this intro, the content is out of alignment. They're not the same because that only updates that one instance of the intro. All other instances of the intro are left unchanged. This is a big problem. And once again, the bigger the website gets, the bigger the problem actually grows. It's an exponential problem. It doesn't scale. It's not maintainable. This is, even though it's more performant and efficient than the initial workflow, it is not the officially proposed workflow. So what is the officially proposed workflow? Let's go ahead and get into it. So this is the approach where we are going to use custom classes, and we are going to use variables like we did before in the styling inputs, but there is going to be huge distinctions between the pros and cons. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a section. I'm going to add my block right here. Okay, I'm going to add my heading. All of this part is going to look very similar. Let's go ahead and add the text. I'm going to add my paragraph. I'm going to add my paragraph here. This is going to be the accent heading. This, we don't need a BR in there. This is going to be my ipsum, @ipsum short. Okay, put that in. Intro heading. Okay, fantastic. And now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this manually first, and then I'm going to show you a feature called AUTOBEM, and we're going to talk about BEM as we do this. BEM, let's just do this. BEM equals block. Let's do it like this. Block, and then double underscore E, okay, element, double dash, and then we'll do M like this, okay? And I have a whole video on BEM. I'll link to it down below. You can get a lot more insight on it. We're only actually gonna worry about B's and E's, blocks and elements. We're not even gonna worry about modifiers in this video. But BEM stands for block element modifier, and I'm gonna explain to you what BEM is as we go. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I am going to, let's organize our structure panel again. So we have the intro, and this is gonna be features, okay? This is gonna be our left, and this is gonna be our right, and this is gonna be our heading, this is gonna be our accent heading, and this is gonna be our lead paragraph right here, okay? So I'm gonna grab my intro, and I am going to put a class of intro on here. Actually, it looks like intro already has styling attached to it, so let's do new intro, just so that we can start from scratch, okay? I was doing another video where we created an intro, and we don't wanna use that, right? We wanna start from scratch. So I'm gonna say new intro, and over here, I'm gonna call this new intro left, all right? And this is how BEM works. The intro, let me collapse it. This is the block, okay? Block. So the block right here is the parent of element children. And you know something is a block because you can reuse it over and over and over again on the website. Like an introduction. There's going to be many of them, right? Many instances of this intro. And so it is a block. A block is a thing that is modular. It's like I can take it, I can lift it, I can put it somewhere else. It'll still make sense. I can put an intro in any section. It'll still make sense. Okay. So it's a block. So we call it new intro. That's the name that we're going to give it. And then what we want to do is we want to add a class to every child of this block, okay? So for example, this would be new intro double underscore heading. Now the double underscore is a separator that attaches the element to the block in just syntax. That's all it is. BEM is nothing technical. BEM is simply a syntax for naming classes. And here's why BEM exists. When people try to use custom classes, they use all these different wild approaches that are usually extremely disorganized. And what happens is because there's no organization, because there's no standard syntax, one is they don't know what belongs to what. They don't know what elements belong to what parents. They don't even know where different elements live on the website because they don't understand the context, because the class names are all disorganized. And what ends up happening is nothing is safe to edit. Nothing is safe to edit because they don't know what the consequences of the edit is going to be. The only way you can safely edit classes is if you know what the consequence of the change is going to be. And the only way you know what the consequence of the change is going to be is if you've created a syntax that's actually organized that gives you that information. Okay, we'll go over this in just a second. But new intro double underscore heading. This is going to be new intro, double underscore accent heading, but we'll probably come back to this because there's one little caveat here, okay? And then on this lead, I'm gonna say new intro, double underscore lead. And what this gives me, these classes give me global control over not just the block itself, but over every element in the block itself, in case I need to uniquely style something, okay? Or really globally style something. Okay, I'm gonna take the new intro. I'm gonna say display grid. I'm gonna say right click, just like I did in some of the other workflows. Say grid 2, okay? Come down, align items to the center, right? Let's get our, we did do our ipsum text. Let's take this accent heading. Make sure everything that I'm doing, the difference is it's not the ID. I'm doing it on the class that I created, okay? So I'm gonna take the accent heading, the class is activated. Here's the class not activated. Here's the class activated. When you do the class, it's applying the styles to the class. That's very important. So I'm gonna go to style layout. Order -1 is being done on that class right there. Okay, I have now achieved my introduction. So now I'm gonna work a little faster now, and I'm gonna show you, because one objection people have to BEM, and granted, this is a great objection, a fantastic objection. Writing the classes for every single element is tedious and it's time consuming, especially if you get a complex block with a lot of elements inside of it. It's a lot of writing class names, okay? Don't worry, we have a solution for that completely removes that objection, okay? All right, and I'm gonna show you that right now. So I'm gonna add another container. This is gonna be our grid. Let's go ahead and call this feature grid, right? And then I'm going to put let's just put a class on there. Let's just put feature grid because it's a block, right? It's a block. It's not a child of the feature section. It is a block because I want to be able to take this feature grid and put it anywhere I want. And it doesn't have to exist in this particular section. So it is a block of its own. So I'm just going to call it feature grid. And we are going to just style it real quick. So grid, and again, I'm styling the class, right? Right click, call this, it's actually not 2. I want it to be 4. So we'll just change that to 4. I want it to have a grid gap. Again, all these styles are attached to the grid itself. Now I'm going to create the card right here. I'm going to add my heading. I'm going to add my text, and I'm going to add my icon. Fantastic. Now, all of these things need classes before I can start styling, but the difference is what I'm going to do is organize my structure panel. Let's call this a feature card, heading, and then we have text, and then we have our icon. I am going to right click, and let's collapse this so you can see exactly what we're doing right here. There is, and I want to make sure we can see it on the recording because this is the important part. This is the magic of this process, okay? There's a little thing that says BEM, okay? What I'm going to do is click that. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that on a feature grid. I'm going to do it on the feature card. This is the thing that I want to BEM. I'm going to bring this over into the middle of the screen so we can see it very easily. Notice what this is doing. It is detecting all of the children of that block, and it is going to apply the classes for me, and it is going to use the names from the structure panel to create the classes. So whatever names I give these things in the structure panel, that's going to be the name of the class. Now, you can also do it backwards, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say heading. Remember, this was like text element or something. And we'll just say that this is, the icon, right? Whatever. We don't want these names, okay? You don't have to name the structure panel first. Let me actually go up to feature card. This was like block or something. You can click BEM right here, bring this over, and you can do the organization right here, okay? So I can say feature card, and look what it's doing. It's extending that to all of our children. And I want this to be text, and I want this to be icon, because there's a little toggle right here that says sync labels. And so whatever I do my organization here, that's going to carry over to the structure panel. But let's just hit the blue button. Let's just hit apply classes and let's see what happens. Look, my structure panel is now organized. And when I, excuse me, when I click on every element, it's going to have a class, not just a class, but a BEM syntaxed class, okay? So all of the hard work of let's type out every class name over and over and over, that's gone. So the main objection to using BEM is gone. It just vanished out of thin air. There is no more, BEM takes too long. BEM, you have to write too many classes. No, you don't. Not with automatic CSS. You absolutely do not. You auto BEM it and you're done in a split second. It is exactly as quick as the other two approaches. So for the other people, oh, styling at the ID level is so quick. Using utility classes is so quick. Well, guess what? When you're using automatic CSS, so is BEM. The speed is exactly the same. The difference is it's only faster if you don't organize your structure panel. If you're organizing your structure panel, all three workflows are exactly the same. The difference with BEM, let's look at the difference that you get with BEM. So I'm going to take this feature card and we are going to go background and we're going to choose our BG Ultralight. We're going to go to layout. We're going to right click. We're going to get our medium spacing in here. We're going to go to border and we're going to add actually, we're just going to do our radius. Okay. We'll do the border in a minute, but I want the rounded corners, right? This needs to explicitly be an H3, by the way. Okay, we'll put that in. And then we need to make sure our class is activated, right? Layout order -1 on that icon to bring it to the top. Now we are ready to duplicate. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate and create multiple instances. And it looks like Bricks is having trouble showing that third instance. So I'm just going to refresh the builder real quick. And okay, now we have all three instances. So let's talk about performance of the style sheet. So when I create these custom classes and I apply styling to them, the builder writes that styling instruction in the style sheet one time, and it doesn't matter how many instances of these blocks there are, it's going to re-reference that initial block of code in a style sheet, okay? So remember when we did utility classes, I said that's how utility classes work. That's also how custom classes work. So it is just as performant as the utility class approach. We're not going to be duplicating styles over and over and over and over again. It's going to re-reference the initial styles that are attached to these classes. That's great. That's fantastic from a performance standpoint. What about the maintainability and the scalability of this approach? Well, remember, we've got to make some changes to this intro. We have to make some changes to these cards. Let's start with the intro. Remember, I want a 2-3 grid instead of an equal column grid, right? So I'm going to grab new intro and I see that this is grid 2. I'm going to say -3. Actually, I want to reverse these, 3, 2, and now I get the structure I want. And if you noticed, if you were paying close attention, the others updated also. So all of the intros on my website, I can update from one single source of truth, which is this class right here. Now, maybe you didn't catch that, and maybe you don't understand the ramifications of that. So let's move on to doing our card. We want all of these cards to update to not have a background, and we want to add a border, okay? And we want to move that icon to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the class. I'm going to go to my style. I'm going to remove the background. Oh, look at that. They all went away. Let's go ahead and add the border. So we're going to go border, 1 pixel. We're going to go solid. We're going to right click. We're going to choose BG light. They all have a border now. Let's grab the icon and let's get rid of that order -1 and send it to the bot. Look, that happened on every single instance. You know what I also did? I forgot along the way, forgot on purpose, to do the mobile styling of all these things. I mean, remember when we did the IDs? I mean, how many instances would you do? And you forgot, my gosh, you forgot to do the mobile styling. Well, let's look at how these things look on mobile. Well, that's actually kind of squishy right there. I actually want that to go to 2 columns at this breakpoint. So again, I'm going to activate the class. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose a 2. And not only does this grid update, but all instances of the grid update. Look at this intro right here. That doesn't actually look so great. I now want to stack it at this breakpoint. So I'm going to go grid 1, and now look, all of them have updated every single instance. I made mistakes where I forgot about the mobile styling when we initially did this, but the classes, the BEM approach saves me, right? Saves me from my mistake. Now I go down here and I say, that looks quite good. No. Here, these need to be 1. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose a 1. And I have made this entire page completely mobile responsive with a few clicks of my mouse. And Any other pages where these things existed also just became mobile responsive with a few clicks of my mouse. Okay, and of course we have things like auto grids and all of this. We don't have to manually do this, but we're going to cover that in a future tutorial. I just wanted to show you how this approach of custom classes completely blows the other two approaches out of the water. And back in the day, people used to say, well, it is superior for scalability and maintainability, but it's a lot of work. You gotta type a lot of class names. Well, first of all, okay, let's get this situation under control. This argument, let's get it under control. It's so disingenuous to say, oh, it's faster to do ID styling. It's faster to do utility class styling. Faster when? Faster getting from point A to point B, right? But what if you need to backtrack from B to A? What if you need to go from B to C? Is it still faster? No. It's actually dramatically slower now. When you go from B to C, because you have to do every instance by itself, it's dramatically slower, dramatically more expensive, okay? Those two approaches are terrible, inefficient approaches in a page builder. Okay? Now, in a code editor, we can have different conversations. But in a page builder, those are dramatically bad workflows. This is the proposed workflow because it is the best workflow. And when you use AUTOBEM, when I say best, that's not my opinion. It's best for maintainability, it's best for scalability, and it's still really great on performance. And because of AUTOBEM, there are no downsides. You don't have to type the class names one by one by one. You can AUTOBEM them all in an instant. And you can actually use AUTOBEM to rename them if you feel like you made a mistake. So for example, feature card. I want this to say automatic card or something. Let's just give it a new name. Well, there are many instances of it, right? I want to go ahead and hit AUTOBEM here. And look what the AUTOBEM tool is doing. It's recognizing that there's already BEM classes attached to these elements. And so it's in a mode called rename classes. Remember, the initial mode when there were no classes was to create classes. Now it's in a different mode of rename classes. And I'm going to say automatic card like this. And then I'm going to hit apply classes. And look, I get automatic card. And then I come down, automatic card heading, automatic card text, automatic card icon. It also kept the styling that was attached to those classes. And if I come down here, now we can't affect the structure panel of all other instances, but if you come down here and you grab this, you can see automatic card heading, automatic card icon. All references of feature card in the class names is gone. In every single instance across your entire website, it is now an automatic card and not a feature card. And if we want to change that back, we can just hit BEM. We can bring this over here and we can say feature card and apply classes. And now they're all updated once again. Very, very fast, very, very efficient. The thing you have to know though, is that you can't BEM, you can't AUTOBEM on the wrong parent or on a block that doesn't have element children. So I'm going to collapse all these so you can see feature grid, AUTOBEM. I'm doing the grid now. Because feature grid doesn't have any element children. What does this mean? If I do feature card, this is not feature grid _card. If that were the case, I could AUTOBEM the grid. But the grid has no element children. It only has blocks as children. Well, AUTOBEM is for the B and the E part. If there's no E's, then AUTOBEM can't do anything. There has to be E's inside the B's. Get it? There has to be elements inside of the blocks. So feature card does have elements, right? It's got a heading, feature card heading, feature card text, feature card icon. Those are elements. So there's a B with E's inside of it that I can AUTOBEM, right? Can I AUTOBEM the whole feature section? No. Let's click BEM. It wants to add classes to everything because it doesn't know what is a block, what is an element, except for the class names. And if we look at the class names, this is not features intro. This is a whole block all on its own called new intro. This is a block, feature grid is a block, feature card is a block. And in this scenario, feature card is the only thing that has element children. So if I wanted to rename feature grid, for example, to automatic grid, I would not use AUTOBEM because I'm not BEMing anything. This is a block. It has no element children. I should just click the pencil and say automatic grid, right? Something like that. It's going to keep its styles. Everything is good, but it's automatic grid. And I can just say automatic grid now, right? That's how I rename things. I don't use AUTOBEM because there was nothing to BEM. AUTOBEM is not a class renaming tool. It can be used for renaming BEM classes, but they have to be BEM classes, okay? And if you notice, if there are some things that get included that shouldn't be included, you can exclude them by clicking the little X. You can add them back by hitting the little plus sign. So there are a bunch of things that you can do beyond this. We might do a dedicated video to AUTOBEM, but the proposed workflow is from scratch, right? You are creating your elements in your blocks, and then you're AUTOBEMing them, organizing your structure panel, you're good to go, you add your styles, you move on with your life. That is the proposed workflow. And this video is mainly designed to show you the difference between ID and utility class and custom class. And when you use custom class, you have to have a way to organize your custom classes. BEM is the easiest and what we think is the best syntax for doing that. And we created a tool called AUTOBEM that removes the need for typing all of those classes manually. Hopefully you understand why the proposed workflow is the way that it is. Hopefully that you understand the downsides of ID styling, the downsides of a utility first approach. And even though this might take you a little bit of practice, it is wildly better and so worth it. It is so worth it, especially when you come back to maintain a site or iterate on a website. You are going to love the fact that you've done this workflow because everything is going to be insanely organized and it's going to be so easy and quick to make these updates and make these changes and build upon and add new things, okay? That's it for this video. If you have any questions, drop your comments below or come into the support community. We are happy to help you. We really want you to understand this and wrap your mind around it. So we are standing by, ready to answer any questions you have or address any issues that you run into. I'll be back with another lesson very soon. Cheers.